Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris with Sharaad, Kuttan, and on the show we have with us Senator Yusmadi Yusoff. We're talking about reforms to the Senate or Dewan Negara. So you have this report out, right? So as part of the Senate Reform Working Committee, you've made several recommendations on how to have innovations in the Senate. What are some of the proposals that you've put forth?
Out of 37 pages, it has 9 recommendations. So out of 9, I can divide into 3. The first one is about introducing the relevant legislations. You need the law, because in 1963, we used to have Parliamentary Services Act. You need a piece of legislation to draw a line between the 3 branches of important entity. You know, the legislature, judiciary, and also the executive. So currently, we don't have that. We need to draw a line, because otherwise we don't have independency. Number 2, I also talk about the content of the Senate. For example, the issue of gender equality, the issue of appointments, the issue of select committee, how you need to have a special committee to vet through certain irrelevant proposed legislations. And thirdly, I also talk about support system, because we are talking about today, after 60 years, senator or parliamentarians not even have research assistants, not even have their own office, and unfortunately, this thing I have to make it public. The support staff in parliament is not good enough, because I talked to them. They said, no, YB, sometimes we even have to sleep in the printing room. Can you do something more organized? I said, what is that? You know, from Dewan Rakyat to Dewan Negara, at least we have gaps. So these are little things I think must be looked into in order to give a total effect for a reform and better parliament.
But isn't it also true that the Dewan Negara gets quite a big chunk of the parliamentary budget? I mean, if they're not spending it on a bunk bed for staff, and they're not spending it on researchers,
almost a third of the
so what are they
budget
spending this money on?
So I was told by the parliament staff, at least in last budget we spent about 114, if I'm not mistaken, millions for parliament, and 1/3 meant for Dewan Negara. So you have a point, because for me, I have a chance to travel to other parliaments. When you're talking about democracy, parliamentary democracy, you're talking about participation, transparency. So if you build up structure, blocks, which is more expensive, what does it mean? It can be highly immoral politically. So how at the same time talk about reform, at the same time you're talking about building up another blocks to reform. So I see your point, but for me, it has to start somewhere. So the somewhere that I'm looking at now, especially how to make parliamentarian become effective, at least to have good debates, at least to argue something important, at least to use the taxpayer money effectively. So at least when I asked Tun Mahathir in one dialogue, I said, Prime Minister, being someone who was a senator, what do you see that we can reform? So he said, I would love to see good debates. So for me, good debate matters, because you need good laws for the society.
Okay, so you're saying that better support for senators will allow them to debate issues better in parliament. And if I'm not mistaken as well, you know, Dewan Negara can also propose new laws, but that's something that we're not seeing very much in the Senate, are we?
Yeah. Theoretically speaking, the law can come from the upper house to the lower house, but of course it didn't happen.
I mean,
why?
It hasn't happened in 60 years.
Yeah, why? Of course, is a question of politics. You're talking about you've been led by one party, rule party for the last 60 years. But for me, if it were to happen, it has another stumbling block. You cannot even talk about financial bills. So for me, not everything about financial. You can talk about, say, on sustainability. You can talk about disabled. You can talk about, marginalized. For example, now the issue of employment, you know, youth employment. These are all the critical issues. So for me, that I hope will happen.
Okay.
If this reform go through.
So we want quality conversation in Parliament. Of course, that is dependent on the quality of the people at the Dewan Negara. And there's a guideline for appointments. And I want to just to kind of inform our audience that a part of the people in Dewan Negara are there because of the state legislatures that nominate them or elect them. And then there are nominations that come, as you said, special interest groups and such. Is there a possibility, because this has already been proposed by Abid and Mukre, some ideas, that actually we open Dewan Negara up to elections, popular elections, maybe even using a different system, not first past the post, obviously, but something like proportional representation. Would you be open to that idea?
In fact, it was discussed because in other parts of jurisdiction like Australia, there was a form of election. So for me, yeah, it's not a bad idea. It is one option being practiced. Whether it works. So the question is now, what is our priority now, especially now, the state of economy, blah, 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 blah. So the point I want to say is that, what is the issue here is that, for me, the issue, for me, at least I'm convinced, to get the right people. You can get the right people. Of course, one of those is election. One of those is maybe through a proper mechanism of process.
Right.
Like I said, the one
the guidelines.
The
and
guidelines.
Such. Okay.
For example, nowadays, let's have a special seat for people from the arts, orang seni, maybe people from the chambers, or maybe people from
the media.
The media.
I would love to be a senator.
And you know what? After I reviewed this report, you're not wrong. I've been getting so many calls. They thought that I have a power to recommend them. I don't want to mention it, but they say, Yusmadi, can you recommend my name? I said, I have no power. It has to come from the Prime Minister or the party state leaders. So at least for me, I'm very happy. At least things are responsive. People start asking questions. So for me, this reform is not about me, about even Dewan Negara. It's still about the very promise of our constitution, how our parliamentary democracy must have another venue called Dewan Negara, and that Dewan Negara is supposed to be the revising body.
Right.
So I think, I hope rakyat see how important, how significant is Dewan Negara.
Well, that's true. So there has to be some kind of, I guess, education in that respect for the public as to the role of Dewan Negara of the Senate, right? But also, there should be some education for the senators themselves. Now, you're right to say that some senators have expertise in different fields, but are they kind of aware of what their roles are within the upper house of the parliament? So one of your proposals is to set up a Senate Academy, essentially to kind of train senators as to their role, right?
Okay, democracy is about habits of the heart. How to build that habits of the heart, it doesn't start from certain educational process. When it didn't happen in school, it didn't happen in your high school, it didn't happen in your university, it has to happen somewhere. So I think it's not too late to have parliamentary academy or parliamentary institute. For example, you can have universities collaborate with parliament. And it's happening. And I have to put on record here, under the leadership of current speaker, Dato' Arif himself, I think being someone who was academician, someone who was learned as a judge whatsoever, almost every weekend we have program, we have forum, we have stakeholder engagement in parliament. So the question is that I want it to go a step further. I don't want it like ad hoc process. So now, apart from this parliamentary proposal, what is happening in parliament now, we have a new things like what they call it, CSO, parliamentarians, caucuses. So recently we initiated something on sustainability led by Marichin, YB Marichin, and also participated by many prominent civil society leaders. But of course, I think, is that good enough? I think not good enough. There are many other issues. For example, today I was invited to go to other country on intelligence and security. They are talking about so many other things. So for me, bottom line, we have to tell rakyat, democracy in Malaysia is not only happen in 4 years or 5 years. It can happen every day during any session. So for me, we have to educate, and in order to do that, I think we need to create more media specialists or media, I would say, concerned reporters who come to Dewan Negara. I have that problems because I have to put on record here. One editor told me, Yusmadi, you know why we have less media to cover your house? 2 reasons. Number one, you guys not dramatic enough. I said, fine, you want me to shout? I can shout.
Not dramatic enough.
Yeah. Because sometimes you're a journalist, you know.
It's not good TV.
Yeah, because recently, again, for example, what was the news was covered recently become big hoo-ha. There's one senator, last part of his debate, he said, Yang Mulia Dewan, Menteri, can you consider a law to protect men for sexual rights? Of course, I feel embarrassed. I disagree on that, but it was not the main part of the discussion. But one news portal took it and become big hoo-ha, and there was a petition. But before that, I debated something even bigger, where we are talking about the bill of Undang-Undang Syariah, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, or whether Muslim practitioner only can go to Sharia court. So I said, why not non-Muslim? So the discussion was so interesting, jurisprudential, and knowing Menteri Mujahid, he himself would like to offer his knowledge, because he's also a professor. So it was so interesting. But what was picked up and become big hoo-ha, the last part. And
Okay.
not only that,
So missing the reporting
and
of that.
not only that, I don't blame media, I don't blame anyone, because I see a misunderstood institution. It was wrongly understood. They said that the deputy speaker agreed with what was said. Actually, it was a tradition for the speaker to say, terima kasih atas pandangan-pandangan yang telah dihujahkan. But he not even
That
say
was
he
taken,
disagreed.
yeah. All right,
So
we're
for
going to
me-
come back and continue this conversation right here on Consider This. Please stay tuned right here on Asra Money.